Well, Kamala has made another appeal to gun owners by telling us exactly what kind of gun she owns on an interview with 60 Minutes. And today we're going to talk about that gun. And I'm also going to talk about a proposition that she supported because I find it very interesting when she tells us what kind of gun she owns and the proposition that she supported. It may give you a better and clear understanding to how Kamala actually feels about your right to own firearms, including handguns. So I think this will be a great video to kind of break through the noise and give you the actual facts, right? Kamala's done some bouncing back and forth, but there is one thing she stayed very consistent on, and that is this issue right here, the gun issue. So we're going to talk about that, and of course, I want to hear your opinion. If you agree, disagree, doesn't matter, let me know down below after the video. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Let's go ahead and get into it. So Kamala does an interview with Bill Whittaker on 60 Minutes, and he's actually pressing her on quite a bit of stuff. It's not just a bunch of softballs out there, so I find that part of it impressive, but then they get on the subject of guns, and Kamala gives us this little gem right here.
So what kind of gun do you own, and when and why did you get it?
I have a Glock, and I've had it for quite some time. And I mean, look, Bill, my background is in law enforcement. And so there you go.
Have you ever fired it?
Yes. Of course I have. At a shooting range.
So Kamala cited her time in law enforcement, and of course this is no surprise that most people in law enforcement are familiar with Glocks, right? I think 60 to 70% of agencies in the United States still carry Glocks on a daily basis, and something like 48 countries are carrying Glocks as well. So they are obviously widely known in the United States and worldwide. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you know that Glocks are not my favorite handgun out there. I feel like they did some incredible things in the 80s and the 90s, and hell, if I was carrying a gun back then, I probably would have been carrying a Glock. But at the same time, since, I don't know, 2010, roughly, you start seeing all these other companies coming out with Glock copies, but a lot of these pistols are better than what Glock puts out today. I find that Glock is, you know, they still make reliable handguns, and there's no doubt about it. If you need to change anything or get a mag or get a part of any kind, Glock is the go-to, right? A lot of people carry these, a lot of people make parts for these. There's entire stores dedicated to the brand. But I find that a lot of other pistols out there are just as reliable, and they actually shoot better with better features, and sometimes even at a cheaper cost. But somebody that isn't necessarily like into guns, but is familiar with one specific brand, that's the way I would kind of see this playing out for somebody like Kamala, right? If she carried a Glock, or she had access to a Glock at one time, and then she buys her personal gun, I would imagine, you know, unless you're like into guns and you want to try out, you know, this model or Smith & Wesson or SIG or whatever, you'd probably gravitate to the one that you've carried in the past. Now, she was asked, hey, have you ever shot that gun?
Yes. Of course I have. At a shooting range. Yes, of course I have.
Of course I've shot my gun. I was in law enforcement. Remember the whole thing? If somebody walks in my house, all that type of stuff. So it's clear, and I would love to see video of that, by the way. If anybody can ever find video of Kamala Harris at the range, I want to see the targets. I want to see an over-the-shoulder, very similar to what we do here, and a lot of reviewers do it. I want to see over-the-shoulder perspective and see how accurate she really is with that gun, or if it's just a fumbling mess. I would love to see that. So I almost wouldn't be surprised if in the next, I don't know, 25 days or so, we see some type of video of Kamala at the gun range, right? I really doubt they'll show her shooting and be able to actually see the target, though. You might get a side shot, right, where she's shooting the pistol, but I really doubt you'll be able to see the target. I'm just saying. I wouldn't be surprised to see that video, though, because pandering is something that she does really well. And even though she's a flip-flopper, right, like a bass on the bank, I think is what I said in previous videos, there is one issue she has stayed very consistent on, and that's firearms. So if she owns a handgun, she's claimed that her and Tim Waltz are gun owners, right? Then you must be thinking, well, hell, I'm tired of Donald Trump, right? I want somebody that's going to support the Second Amendment, but also stand up for my values. whatever values those may be, that may be your perfect candidate, right? But I would hold off on casting that vote just yet until you see the proposition that she was actually a big time supporter of, and this was back in 2005. It was called Proposition H. I chuckle when I say it just because, well,
we finally have a working tractor beam, which we shall call Preparation H. What?
Why don't you just call it Operation Ass Cream, you ass?
So anyways, Proposition H basically said in San Francisco, you could no longer possess, manufacture, sell, transfer any guns, including handguns, and the ammunition that went along with those guns. She was the DA from 2004 to 2011. From 2011 to, I believe, 2017, she was the district attorney, right? So she fully supported this, but there was actually some prominent Democrats, names we still know today, that did not support this. Even they thought it was maybe just a little too extreme for their side. So you had then Mayor Gavin Newsom, and then you had Dianne Feinstein. Neither one of them actually supported this, but Kamala 100% did. Now, there's no record of her talking a ton about it, but she was one of the co-sponsors. And believe it or not, this thing actually got voted in. It was something like 123,000 yeses to, I don't know, 88,000, 89,000 no's. Fortunately, in state court, it was shot down. And even the NRA got, I don't know, $380,000 paid back to them because of, taking this fight to San Francisco and California. And so I don't know if that was just reimbursement for their time going in there and fighting this thing, or if there was compensation along with it. They weren't the only gun rights group to actually go in there and fight this thing, by the way, but they were definitely on the front lines. Now, when there's a bill out there that even Dianne Feinstein is too nervous to sign.
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it.
I mean, gun control bills, dude, they just kind of toss these things around in California. They love them all, right? They'll throw anything that sticks, and unfortunately, a lot of it does, and it hurts a lot of gun owners in California. But when you have somebody like Dianne Feinstein and Gavin Newsom that say, I'm not touching that one, that's when you know you have something very extreme. It's like, even too extreme for them is extremist almost when it comes to guns. Now, that's an all-out gun ban. I mean, that is not just, and I say just very loosely, by the way, but that's not just restricting a magazine or restricting features on a firearm that can be sold, right? That is an all-out ban. Possession, sell, transfer, nothing of firearms and ammunition. That's pretty scary. Now, maybe you're saying, okay, that looks really bad, but maybe it was a lapse of judgment. Okay, well, let's go with that for a second. If we do that, though, it doesn't get much better from there, because even in 2019, she supported mandatory buybacks of so-called assault weapons. And this is something she's talked about just even up to a couple of months ago, as far as banning all-out assault weapons. And she pretty much says it the same exact way every single time.
It is a false choice to suggest you are either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. I am in favor of the Second Amendment, and we need an assault weapons ban. And I believe we need to reinstate the assault weapons ban.
Finally pass red flag laws, universal background checks, and an assault weapons ban.
Yes, I am a gun owner, and Tim Walz is a gun owner, and we're not trying to take anybody's guns away from them. But we do need an assault weapons ban.
Almost as if it's rehearsed or something. So this is somebody that says, hey, I have a gun, I have security, I have the Secret Service. Take that for what it's worth. But I have all these things to protect myself, but I, Kamala Harris, am willing to ban you from owning those same firearms.
And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
Because I can be trusted, but you can't. And it even says as much in Proposition H. Proposition H actually only gave law enforcement, security personnel, active military the ability to own their firearms or carry their firearms when they're on duty. Which means she doesn't believe in the Second Amendment, because that's exactly everything the founders wrote the Second Amendment to protect against. Just governments, right, whether that's local, state, federal, having the ability to have guns, private citizens cannot. That goes against the entire foundation of why the Second Amendment is there. So each time she says, I support the Second Amendment, but, or I support the Second Amendment and I support assault weapons ban, there's no way those two things can go together. I really hope that you will keep this Proposition H, whether you call it Preparation H or Proposition H, keep that in the back of your head when you go to vote in November. Because even if you're not an all-out gun rights advocate, your protection, no matter who you are, is so vital and important to you. And knowing that there's somebody on the ballot that is 100% willing to take those guns, and we've actually seen her vote in favor of doing this, and she's still talking about doing it. That to me is a scary proposition. But that's just my opinion, and I'd love to hear yours. Let me know what you think down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one, and as always, holding down.